Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So there's been this recurring theme in my awareness about our privilege. I'm very much speaking for myself, and I'm speaking to like white male counterparts in our culture. From a historical context, right, of recognizing a colonial imperialist worldview. As far as like, I grew up in Canada, I'm aware of in First Nations and Indigenous, and even from a historical context, openly being like, white people came from Europe and mass slaughtered and then endeavored to deny their roots and culture completely, i.e., connection to land, and modernize or colonialize, right? Like teaching English and various other European languages, and educating within a certain framework, and shaming their roots, you know and how sad it is to continue to witness this beast of perspective brutalize and take over the world. And like, where my mind is coming from with regards to like a mass awakening, more and more people endeavoring spiritual connection, and again looking at kind of, and again, these are general terms, so it's like, this is where nuance and discernment comes in. Empathy, we're all just humans here trying to work it out, trying to not die, trying to survive. And somebody who's been sharing on the internet for a long time about alchemical healing and an earnest desire for a more loving world. Okay, there's quite a few shares on this channel and on different platforms where I share a little bit more about my story, if that's of interest to you, as we get into this chat. So I'm calling this the privileged blind spot because, and again, somebody who's been in this quote unquote healing and spiritual community for a while, in my culture, from my background, and having been humbled perpetually, and knowing my privilege, and yet being a woman who is from a historical context, still coming from like being a second-class citizen, so women are still endeavoring more of their rights and freedom and value in the patriarchal system. And yet I'm like, well, we don't, in my awareness anyway, like, we're not here to uphold the patriarchal system. We're here to transform ourselves and the world to make it a better place, future forward, where there are no borders and boundaries, and there are no these structures have crumbled, these imperialist, colonialist, fascist, racist, these divisive, fearful, propagated cultures or ways of being or whatever are breaking down, are falling out in front of our eyes. And so it's all divine. There's this part of my awareness like, oh my God, just like from the heart, it's all divine, it's all magical, it's all beautiful, and it's all meant to be. And we are learning, and we are changing, and it will continue to change, of course. And yet also holding space for the collective, because everything that's going on, it might be pretty frightening for a lot of people. And death is part of life, and from a lot of perspective, you could almost say it's unforgivable. It's unforgivable our historical context and what we've done to other nations and cultures and people who had a more harmonious way of being on this planet, more sacred, even though that worldview kind of shaped and shamed it as barbaric or like primitive or that, bullshit, which most of us can get to that point where we recognize they're actually holding the wisdom and the key, right? So hence us like forgiving ourselves and being forgiven and like endeavoring to work with lots of these different aspects of self, right? Because we are all one. So anywho, okay, privilege blind spot and like how I'm kind of honing in on it, looking at the white male program and potentially from other male dominated cultures and societies, why people are talking about the divine rising feminine, or like where even you could say like white women are really having to kind of lead, or just women in general, because it's a blind spot for men in a patriarchal system, because what's been inherited, so again, unconscious programming, that a lot of this, you create your own reality and endeavoring to manifest our freedom, we're coming up against these inherited programs, right? It's all programming, and we're all projecting our illusion and or perceiving our illusion through our own heart space, and yet lacking empathy. So the inherited programming of superiority, which again comes out through judgment, thinking that those people deserve that, or those people are barbaric, or like easily being manipulated by information. That's a lack of empathy. And there's comfort and complacency, because a lot of the like inherited superiority comes with wealth and privileges that give you certain comforts that other people don't inherit, right? Like the poorer classes don't inherit that. Certainly, to go as far as like there's brutality inherited, and like the white privilege program would have been in different generations the ones invoking, and still are the ones impressing that brutality onto other. I saw something that made me weep recently. In the last couple of weeks, I saw a video of a white police officer just standing on a First Nations man, obviously having pulled him over. Who knows exactly the context, but again, that brutality only comes with a disconnect. So this is, again, part of our rising awareness and consciousness is the unity consciousness, which is where empathy comes in, which is where we just wouldn't want to brutalize one another in such a manner because of our understanding of collective karma, individual karma, and the shadow. Now I'm continuing to trace my book and reflect to you guys that like I because it was so intuitively guided, I do use different language, and I call it simply the karmic backlog. That coming into greater unity into the new earth consciousness requires us to like unpack through shadow work, or emotional healing, sitting with our emotional storms, as I call them, being triggered to then observe the wave of the emotional field and be able to alchemize the karmic backlog. And that's different for everybody. Every single one of us can work with the emotional field or the quantum field in a different way. So comfort and complacency is part of that inheritance. So we lack the empathy to really truly understand the suffering, the struggle of different classes who have inherited different wealth and wisdom, but that wealth and wisdom has been shamed and denied by the overarching culture of the patriarchal structures, which, we can clearly see the American dream is kind of leading the way. They're the one in many ways, and there's a lot of ignorance tied in with this, but they're the ones that are becoming the kind of great empire that's on show for us to see these collapsing structures, right? And almost like the expose of American culture is starting to wake up more and more people to like, oh fuck, this is like, these cultural imprints and privilege imprints are imprinted in all of our patriarchal structures, warmongering structures, the military war complex, which is deeply connected to American policy, American foreign policy. And this is where we're going to continue to observe and thus pull back and shapeshift and do all this emotional healing, in a sense, to collectivize and make the world a better place, not go down with the kind of these blind spots, right? Not because we can see it's like, oh my goodness, right? So lacking empathy is a block to growth. Recognizing our own personal lineage of colonial, imperialist cruelty and brutality. And this is where the emotion, people talk about like we're awakening from enslavement from a labor and physical perspective, or it's more obvious to pinpoint abuse patterns through a physical. But again, as we evolve as a species, what we are waking up to connects to the teachings of presence of Eckhart Tolle in his book, A New Earth. But what we're increasingly waking up to is the emotional abuse, is our inherited greater power to shapeshift the external via our psycho-spiritual and emotional awareness. But at the same time, it's more subtle and in many ways more painful. We think about the physical as being painful, but the emotional is physical. It's just more subtle. And yet there's a lot of emotional pain that we are carrying because it's karmic, right? It's as one. So our inherited brutality. So if our ancestors were the ones that brutalized and enslaved and killed other people and cultures, we're the ones that are here to do that healing, or not. But I would say more and more people are, once they intellectually understand how it works and what it is, they will endeavor it, right? And because it's connected to their freedom as well. It's obviously, but of course, the block is that they've inherited the superiority complex. We're better than, and inherited the illusion of power. That's why there's more resistance. Who most of us who've been oppressed or been on this path for maybe a little longer can see, like, there's a compassionate understanding. Of course, if you've got all the power and everybody serves you, and right, why would you want to give that up? So we hold space with compassion. Hence where I've written, so the colonialist cruelty and brutality, that, that grouping of our society and culture are here to actually transform that. And as are we, as we recognize it and or endeavor and continue to feel the pain of it. The final to break down, and this is why they're resistant, because their programming would put them higher than everybody else. Like, that pain isn't my pain. Hence, even even these broad sweeping generalizations of a patriarchal structure, which says women are crazy, women and their feelings and emotions are crazy. That is a direct colonial imperialist program to deny our power and keep us in opposition to one another, right? Instead of recognizing that women are endeavoring to process, hence this idea of women coming more into their power to lead and continue to support all of us in this greater healing for a more unified, collectivized, and harmonious world. Is this going to happen, overnight? Of course not. Is this some utopian idealization? No. As far as this is simply honoring the idea, which a lot of us have come to through science, etc., of our collective evolution. So instead of just being brutalized forever and going, it's always been this way, and we've always been at war, and this is the economy, and this is just how it is, we're evolving all together as a species. How? Through the heart. Even our becoming healthier, our living in alignment, all that stuff is being learned, adjusted, and felt through the heart. the more humble we are and the more grounded we are, the more we can, recognize this constant evolutionary healing and learning that we're all in together, in essence, right? We're all at different places and spaces, and you know trying to hold space for it all. I did make notes for this one because I got the download last night, and I almost wanted to write it down, or so I knew when I woke up this morning that I wanted to hash this one out. So I'm speaking again to some white men, basically, and or people who resonate with it, who know. And again, privilege is meaning that you have probably necessarily never really had to worry about money, or never worried about food on the table, or and again, there's so much nuance to us. I'm not saying that we don't all struggle. Well, plenty of white men are struggling and enslaved by the different classes, but there still is an inherited power to being a certain race in a certain culture. But again, here's the kind of nuance to it, or insight. Material privilege is an inherited disconnection. So that's part of the empathy with a lot of our world leaders, and these people trying to do these awful things, or thinking they're so special and important. The more empathy you grow with, you can actually feel and see how traumatized they are, how how much karma they're accumulating and have within, which is why they're so emotionally stunted and traumatized to the point of hoarding billions and being felons, and then the ignorant masses, certainly from within that kind of American or North American bubble, mostly American, but because the more distorted and dystopian it becomes on an obvious level, the more of us can awaken. The more of these atrocities and wars, the more people are kind of going, wait a minute, why is this happening? What the actual material privilege is an inherited disconnection to empathy. Because materiality is an addiction, right? Or an addiction is pointing to pain. And the new earth is alchemizing and endeavoring us to own the shadow, which is owning emotional pain. The beauty or reward, although it's, again, not a quick fix, the more we alchemize, the more we work with the emotional body, the more protected we are, the safer we are, the healthier we are, the more we connect in a really beautiful way. And there's plenty and plenty of people on the planet who are connected, who know their connection, who are kind, who are whole, who are, free to a certain degree. And yet my awareness is to also give back the land, to give as much as and where possible, to give back the land to, Native people and cultures. This is where people have to rise up and claim their inheritance from the people that stole it from them, like corporations and mainly corporations, i.e. certain political regimes. So why mass? And that is where we can hold space for the addiction to power. Addiction to power comes through a mass disconnect, a mass lack, really, right? Why mass turbulence and loss? Because the mass turbulence loss, and I testified to it as a very young child, seeing war, seeing violence. But always, my sister's the same, and not all children, most of us on this certain journey can reflect and agree with that. It's where we always felt like outsiders, or we was always teased and bullied by, man, why are you crying? It's just a movie, or why, and it's well, because it's a representation of reality, because that movie is actually telling a story of a historical context, and it pains me to see us treating one another like that. It pains me to see us treating animals like that. So why master healing thoughts? Because it's inspiring more and more of the masses to awaken into this paradigm shift. And this is part of my own intuitive calling, wanting to make the world a better place, was the awareness or insight of a paradigm shift on this planet. It's like, it's not some quick fix. It's not like, well, we need to vote for who and so, and we need to make more money, and we, it's a divine spiritual paradigm shift where one by one by one by one by one, more and more people are awakening, being like, oh my God, no, and changing their perspective, because it's all within us. And we're multidimensional, right? Like, we truly are cosmic, eternal beings. My God, isn't that a beautiful thing? But some people are not, they don't see that yet. And they're still trying to get their stuff and still trying to get their power and haven't disenfranchised from that systematic grind, right? So recognizing that paradigm shift, losing, okay, so other triggers, losing what we love can deepen our collective empathy. This is part of shakeups and breakups in relationships, is that we lose one another in our egoic arrogance. We can, yeah, that's, I know, defo been part of a huge aspect of my awakening, was making impulsive choices, which ended up in me losing people I loved, and having to integrate that loss and just get humbled, or me losing all the monies and having complete financial collapse, which I just had to commit to having faith and in the journey, in the process. And no, and my life is radically different, and but yet stable now. And now I'm having to hold space a lot more, not be impulsive, stay sustainable, practice what I preach, all that holla shazam. And it is unfolding in a more miraculous, divine, and my whole, it is all transformed and beautiful, but it is what it is, as far as we all have our own delusions of grandeur, our own egoic projections, our deepest shadow, which is blind spots for all of us. Like, this is where I'm speaking to it, where it's like I've had, and will probably still continue to have, my own blind spots. But I can see the flow unfolding and knowing that it's working, but my God, it's deep. And this is where, being shamed or being denied, and I'm speaking to this because it's often come from my white brothers, maybe as lovers, where there's a direct shadow projection where they're not owning their own. And it's like, guys, this, right? And it's like, and yet now it's just this, I'm looking back and I'm reflecting and I'm holding space, and it's not an attack, it's just my own interpretation, my own awareness of things, right? So losing what we love can deepen our collective empathy into a greater love. So people losing their wives or their, daughters or sons, that then trigger them into being like, why me? And then it's like learning about all these things to then keep learning about all these things to then keep learning about all these things. Because let's be real, as we come into greater collective community with the empathy, spiritual awareness, and heart that we need to then let it grow divinely, we're all just going to be holding space for one another, sharing our skills and sharing our wisdom, and sharing our food probably as well, right? Deepen. So yeah, losing what we love can often trigger our empathic heart. And that's the biofeedback loop of awakening to these colonialist, imperialist, generational psychological warfare, mind control. Is that recognize for this colonialist addiction worldview to be perpetuated in a multi-generational way, they've had to continue to use clever tactics to control us. Education, media, whether it was books, whether it was then the radio, whether it was then the television, have been part of the psychological warfare, right, through the mind control to try to keep us enslaved. And yet that's all. And this is where we can see it a little bit as a psychological and or spiritual battle, is that Things like esoteric occultism and um, ritual, all that kind of stuff, which has also often been like sort of shamed on one level. I would say with that kind of idea of the feminine, like shamed on one level, but there's full awareness and uses of from that, again, imprint of wanting to enslave humanity. Those in power are using these techniques and tools, and yet they're potentially using it from a more base, because they're wanting to enslave. They're still not accessing their power of light. So it's just a kind of yin yang kind of infinity loop, where more of the light forces are coming to work with this land and work with this planet just through the divine, precession of the equinoxes, and like and the turning of the zodiac wheel and the enlivening of this planet as it sheds the skin, right? We're shedding the old skin, which is part of where we're discovering deeper aspects of our earthly wisdom. There's pyramids everywhere that are connected to the cosmos, that we've ebbed and flowed and expanded and contracted through aeons and ages, eternal wisdom on this planet. We tried to tell the story that we're like super modern and et cetera, but actually this idea of being super modern was actually still an outworking of a very dark and base age, which I would say is just ongoing and eternal and constant. And isn't it a privilege to be here? Hi. Where are you from? I don't know. I like space somewhere. It's been constant, right? And painful. And I say that like in this moment with a lot of love and almost humor, because it's a protected pain. What I mean by that is that it's guided by spirit. So all the loneliness and all the like, right? Like that's what I mean about the ugly crying, but like the full body alchemy of healing the emotion, healing the shadow, integrating the shadow, is just like wanting to crawl out of your skin, not knowing when it's gonna end. Like all you can do is fucking pray in that space. And it can be years. I wish I could say just 21 days, you guys, and then you'll be over it. But for me now, it's been full on coming into my 12th year, really, because it was 2013. But then I've always been empathic and feely, right? But it was through conscious awareness, meditation, yoga, many years, and then eventual having the awareness to hold the space and go deeper into the shadow, to then be working with these like emotional storms where it's just like I said, all these, but alone mostly, and sometimes with other when it was divinely guided, that that somebody came into my awareness that could hold space and not try to intellectualize it and not try to stifle it and not try to repress it, right? Which many in our fields of healing are still doing that. So when you feel me, you know what I'm talking about. It's like you're going to be held. Trust. It's going to be deeply healing, but it could be a bit of a longer road than the mind controlled mind expected or wanted. I just wanted my mother to know. I manifest it. Okay. It's so much bigger than our little minds. And yet, thank you, little mind, for, being part of the journey kind of thing, right? So anyway. And it's all happening now, by the way. Like this, everything I'm talking about is happening now. And the divine feminine within us, that those of us, male, female, trans, whatever gender and identity you identify with, it's the feminine within us, which is the darkness, which is the emotion, which is the void, which is the not unseen. Whether, that aspect within self is what is leading us into new paradigm. And the more we allow it to lead, the more present, more wise, right? The more creative, holla, snaky juice, and the more regenerative we become. So there are beautiful rewards, but it's nothing like what we imagine, and it's not about what we have. It's not about how much. It's not about what we look like, you know? As much as when we're in the three-dimensional, we focus on that. You know, of course, we focus on that. And there's an adornment. That's we want to be sexalicious because we're all creative. But thinking that it comes from the way we paint our faces or the way we've been conditioned to perceive looks and beauty, you know, beauty standard, whatever. That really is all bullshit. So so then is this my final point? Yep, we're getting to the final point. Holla. American Dream is the collective awakening to longstanding enslavement systems and mass uprising into shared new earth. Yeah, there's sometimes these awarenesses that I get, I'm like, how do I express it in words? You know, so the American Dream also recognize it Matrix, dream spell. Watching this nation rise to try to take over the world, it is a reflection of our own collective dream spell awakening to greater unified power. Even simple example like the TikTok ban and how many people went to Red Note and how it's helping us to learn more about people in different parts of the world. How all the words are connected. It's all part of this long-standing colonial imperium. It's like, take over the world, the land of the free. It's like anything but that. So it's like a polarized reflection of one and the same thing. And that's the beginning of the end. So the more power they're trying to exude is where the more masses are starting to disenfranchise and reclaim their divine inheritance, not their privileged inheritance. Give that away. Give that away. Share it, right? And then allow more and more and more of the beings of light and the beings that want the divine unfolding, because it's like this idea of like the meek shall inherit the earth. Give it away and then inherit your true divinity. I think that's it, my lovers. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being here. Thank you for being a friend. I'm pretty much a professional singer. I'm not though. Hey, check out my merch. Check out what I'm find a song. Work, 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 work. Check out the merch, you guys. Also love apparel. This one says meditation because meditation is part of the receptivity or not. Meditation is not for everybody. It is for me yoga vibratories, and yet you are the way. Your body, your mind, your heart, like feeling and listening, right? It's all there. We've got the power. We do got the power, but my God, it's a minefield. Tame the information. That also message come through recently where I'm like, gee, whizzicles. We're not quite designed for the amount of information that we're just being bombarded with. So, you know, let's get physical and spiritual and emotional and put down our bloody devices and stop trying to rationalize it and intellectualize it and there are no answers. The moment is here. And you are the answer in every moment because you're existing, and that's the Hollis Shazam. And know what resonates and know what doesn't, you know. There we go. Little guided share from me lover supreme. Thank you for being here. Thanks for subscribing and liking. And if you like this video, feel free to share it. And all that jazz. I'm gonna shut her down now because there's now just tomfoolery coming through.